Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Jam Sesh, short form series Concept, Financing, and Development, presented with the participation of the Independent Production Fund at the 2022 Members Lounge. My name is Nancy, and I'm the coordinator of talent development programs at the Canadian Academy. Members Lounge 2022 is presented by the Canadian Media Producers Association, which represents hundreds of Canada's independent producers. They are the people who make the shows and movies that you love. Members Lounge 2022 is also made possible with the support of our programming partners, Directors Guild of Canada in Ontario, William F. White International, Bell Fund, Le Fond Bell, Boat Rocker, NABED 700M Unifor, Telefilm Canada, La Banque Nationale, le Bureau du Cinéma et de la Télévision du Québec, the Independent Production Fund, Panavision, and La SEDEC. If you have any questions for today's speakers, please put them in the Q&A below, and we'll save some time for those at the end of the session. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. Romeo Candido is a proud Filipino-Canadian storyteller with experience in narrative and factual storytelling for film, television, advertising, theater, and beyond. His writing and directing credits include Second Gen, Another Life, This Hour Has 22 Minutes, Son of a Critch, and Shorty, a short film he wrote and directed for the NBA. He is the co-showrunner of season 8 of the popular dance series, The Next Step, and the creator, writer, director, and composer of the 10-part musical series, Topline. Welcome, Romeo. We also have Cyrena Fiel, a singer, songwriter, and actor from Toronto. She stars in the new CBC Gem series Topline as the lead character, Tala. She also wrote and directed her first self-titled EP and released it to streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music just last year. Hello, Cyrena. Also joining us is Michael Goldlist, an actor, writer, and producer who has written and produced 3 digital series, including the 9th on CBC Gem and the upcoming Less Than Kosher. He's created numerous award-winning music videos, dozens of commercials, and 1 Heritage Minute. And Shaina Silver-Baird is an actor, musician, creator, and producer. She's the co-creator, writer, co-executive producer, and star of upcoming series Less Than Kosher. Shaina is also the lead singer-songwriter for electro-pop band Ghost Caravan. This format is so exciting. I'm just going to throw it right to the team at Topline to start us off.
Hi, thank you for joining us. I think we are going to start with the trailer of our 10-part CBC Gem series that we literally dropped on Thursday, that we finished the Wednesday night before the Thursday when it dropped, starring Cyrena, who has joined me.
It's on. Recording.
Can you put your life on the top line? My name is Tala. Online, you might know me as Alicia.
Like cotton candy, Alicia?
Your heart and your harmony.
You do know what a top line does, right?
The people who write the lyrics and hooks and melody for a song. The people behind the hits.
The people responsible for the hits.
Can you auto-tune all your mistakes?
If Dad finds out you're working on music.
Girls, what are you doing making all that noise?
Nothing, Pa! Put that reverb or delay. Make it sound better. Forget your heartache. When my mom passed, life as I knew it changed. Forever.
You know the story about Chicken Little.
The sky is falling.
You have a gift, Tala, just like your mama.
It's bad enough that Mom's gone and now you're gone too.
That's the best thing about toplining. We get to make up life.
This is like a dream job.
You know why it's called dream job? Because it's a fantasy. Don't know you anymore.
Baby, please wake up. The sky is falling down.
If you step out that door, Tala, then you are choosing yourself over your family.
Then I choose me.
Wait, do they call you Alicia over there?
Kind of. I met Eliana.
The Eliana.
We have a multitude of selves within us. Which one are you gonna let shine?
Tell them who you are.
You know you're better than garbage detail. Believe that.
You're really funny.
You remind me of him. Hopeful.
But I found music. Or maybe music found me. And if there's one thing I know, music is life.
I was going to tell you.
But you didn't.
Amazing.
Smile on my face every single time.
That was awesome, guys. Congrats on the drop.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
I guess where I want to start just with some context. Where did the concept for Topline come from, Romeo?
Once upon a time, I was in a Filipino R&B group, and we sang Jodeci songs and did pelvic thrusts on stage in choreography. And so in a sliding door, I had gone into the music making direction. I learned how to produce, and I learned how to top line myself. And so I always liked the idea of like the songwriters, the storytellers of music. And I was interested in doing something for younger audiences. I feel like when I was kind of 12, 13, that's when stories really had an impact on me. And so I thought, and I had done previous musicals, and I kind of wanted to do a musical in the style of the Drake era Toronto, where it was a musical not so much Sondheim and Schwartz, but more like Hit Boy and OVO 40. And so I thought a musical set in Toronto, modern day Toronto, with young music makers was going to be good. And there's, I don't know if you guys know, but like 13, 14, 15-year-olds are making beats better than anything I've ever done. Half the time when we were doing production, I was looking at these kids for tutorials. And so I just like the idea of like young people making impactful music that can go global. And so that's where the idea came from.
I have to say, I got such a kick when I first watched episode 1, because that's also my other world, is music as well. And I saw you guys recording at Revolution, and like I've been in all those rooms, and I've been in that bathroom, and it just like made me feel so connected to your story. It was awesome. It was like they're really telling the story of how this songwriting goes down in this room in real life. That was great job on that.
Thank you.
Romeo and Cyrena, who are your musical influences? Like coming up, like who did you listen to? Who inspired you?
Cyrena, you go.
Okay. I think growing up, I did listen to a lot of Motown. Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston were definitely staples. And then I love Billy Joel. Elvis was like my dad's favorite. And now I listen to like more modern artists like Alessia Cara as one of my like songwriting influences. And then I don't know, I have a lot. But yeah, it's pretty diverse. And I was a music theater kid since the age of 11, so there's also that whole world too.
I hear you.
Me, I listen to everything, but specifically for this musical, I was mostly just kind of like hitting up like top 20 R&B playlists, top 20 Spotify playlists. I was just listening to a lot of pop and young people music. But the thing is, what in
the
like
kids.
Yeah, what them kids are listening to. Like, I grew up in the era of 90s R&B, so all of my music mentors and all of my songwriting mentors, like I write songs with bridge, chorus, hook, outro. Like people don't write songs like that anymore, but like I grew up in the 90s R&B scene, so that's where all of my mentorship came from. But I think kind of like I think what influenced the sound is I was using like what the kids use, like Splice, and like taking samples from like Splice libraries and Ableton, and like so I've been using the modern tools, even though my my influence for this one specifically is 90s R&B.
And did the songs come before the story first, or was it a back and forth? How did that process go?
There's probably 10 songs that were written for it that kind of what are they called, trunk songs, when you write a musical and the songs that don't make it on stage you put in a trunk. So it was going back and forth. There was only one song that was a throwback that I pulled out from like a 10-year-old song that I brought into this one, but everything else was story dictated what the songs were going to be. And there were just a bunch of vibes that were collected, but story had to, if the songs didn't support the story, then I threw them out.
Right. So when you were, because I know IPF we went through it, the development phase followed by the production phase now. So how did the music kind of play into that development phase? I know we asked, like, did the music come first, the story, like, how did you use that development phase in order to get where you needed to go for production?
I think more for people who want to go this route. The development phase, you do your Bible, you do, sample script synopsis kind of things. And then if you get the chunk of money, you get to do a teaser. And for me, I had to make sure that the teaser was really a proof of concept where it showed who the characters were going to be, the world it was going to be in, and the sound of the, like the thing about doing, the thing I hate the most about shows about music is when the music in the shows aren't good. Or like when you watch a show about the music industry and the music in the show sounds like it's done by people who are not part of the music industry. And so in creating the proof of concept, I had to make sure that it sounded like what people are listening to. And then I have a lot of young people. I'm like, does this sound like a Gen Xer trying to make young people music? But so for the proof of concept, I feel like, and like in the proof of concept that we made, it's still emotional. It like the emotion that we wanted to convey. Like if you watch our show and you make it to episode 10, you'll see that it's not just about fun music stuff, that it's actually a very emotional story about somebody finding their way. And so you have to distill that emotional essence into the proof of concept. That's what I think. If your thing's going to be funny, your proof of concept better be funny. If it's going to be emotional, sad, it better be sad. If it's going to be horrific, it has to have the essence of what ultimately the project you want to create.
It's great advice. Absolutely, I agree with that. I have a question for Cyrena, actually. Working on a piece that required you to both act and sing. How did you balance that? How did you find the experience of being in like a straight up scene versus acting through music?
I think that is something that I've been doing since the age of 11. Like I said, my start was in music theater, so it was not much of like it wasn't really difficult for me to say. And I think that I like understand things better through music anyway. So I don't know. I felt like I was really just very comfortable on set, and like with the transition from song to music, it all just felt very like it flowed very well, and there was no discomfort for me. Yeah,
that's great. It definitely comes through on the screen, like you're very much yourself, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and can I do an embarrassing minute for Cyrena? But Cyrena had never acted before. The first time she acted on screen with cameras was for our proof of concept teaser. And then she had done things, but like this was her first on screen, and then for Topline it's her first lead character. And I don't know who's watching, maybe it's just you two, but like I need to emphasize that I've worked with a lot of emerging artists, and I've been lucky to like work with and have stars born moments. And there were so many times on set, whether she was singing or whether she was acting, because she's emerging and newer, all of those instincts were raw and present and available. And I just like, for no other reason, I just want people to see Cyrena's performance in this show.
That's so cool. Oh, thank you.
I'm curious, Romeo, what was the difference? Because I know right now you're working on a more network show. What did you find the difference was between working on something like this, like a web series format, versus network? And did you feel like Topline lived specifically in this format, or did you have to kind of truncate it?
For me, I always think scalability of projects. I always think like, how can it scale up? How can it scale live? How can it scale shorter? And what I want to tell people, before I used to think that these short form series was the way to television, but the mechanics are different. Like I feel like we had to, like in TV, it's an ABC storyline, but here we just got to tell an A storyline, and we had no network notes. So like this was like, this is a format, and this is what I tell people. Don't look at this format as the way to get to the next. Use this format for the way it needs to be used, and maximize kind of this platform. And I feel like this is the format where auteur voices can be incubated and can be nurtured, because they get a little bit more freedom. They don't have so many execs looking down on them, and then they don't get a lot of network notes. I'm working on network stuff and we get notes all the time, but this didn't have it. So just in terms of my vision or my voice, it wasn't diluted by other people's input, because it's a lower kind of budget, so it kind of flies under the radar. And then really the point was to over deliver. People have expectations on what web series should be, web series, but I feel like we're kind of like, you know, there's Homeschool, there's Revenge of the Black Best Friend. There's other things that are elevating this idea of web series being one location, one look, no coverage, no whatever. So like I look at our show and I think it's as good as what's on CBC cable. I think it's as good as the Sort ofs, the Run the Burbs, the Kim's Convenience. And like we worked with a smaller budget. We had to stay nimble. But I think our stuff looks just as hot, if not hotter, than a lot of the stuff that makes it on network.
Agreed. I think it's interesting, Romeo, like you said, there's a danger in treating everything like a stepping stone to get you to your next project, and you can overlook all the things you get to do with this. And I think I definitely made that mistake a little bit with other things, where I was like, you do this version first, and then it gets to the real version when it gets to real television. And
no, if this is what we make, if this is what it is, I'm 100% satisfied. If we don't get a season 2, we told the story in these 10 episodes. If we don't get to scale up, we told the story, and we're just hoping that people find it. We don't think the quality is compromised because we're a lower price point. Is that too swaggy, Cyrena? Was that too cocky?
No, I love it. That's definitely something that I had to learn and adjust my mindset to, because even my dad, I had a conversation with him yesterday. It's like, oh yeah, you guys did this and you're ready for like a bigger network. Like that's the goal, right? And like, no, like the goal was to make like the show as best as we can make it, to deliver the message that we wanted. And I'm like done thinking that not everything's possible in like a short form digital series, because I am so happy and proud of this entire thing and what we were able to do with the budget and all the restrictions. Like, I think it's amazing. I almost swore.
Yeah, we've all seen shows that are like big budget that sucks. So you know, the budget doesn't guarantee that anything's going to be. What's exciting about like things that are being streamed and people are watching them on different devices, like, you know, it's crazy that you have to think that somebody might watch your show on their phone, but it means you have to sort of get story and character across quickly and nimbly, and you can't just be like, it has to look beautiful, because like people are consuming it differently.
And at the end of the day, like I watched Topline on the phone as in my QC and and frankly, people are watching Dune on their phone, and we live and die by our characters. You know what I mean? Like regardless of what screen and the size, we live and die by our characters. We live and die by story. You know, with our projects, we get to live and die by music as well. So like, I feel like music is our production value. I think music is our kind of like special sauce, because it's so expensive to do musical on TV, but we have license to do that in this kind of like streaming type of format. Do we want a bigger budget, and do I want a half hour? Heck yeah. Fuck yeah. Somebody watch our shit. It's easy to put a B and a C and make it 23 minutes all day.
Yeah.
And have more story for different characters. But like, I really do feel like our quality wasn't compromised.
I think you kind of hit that nail on the head with the A plot. Like, it's better if you have less time, you just take that one story and make it as like emotional and not overwrought, but like make it as real and deep as possible. And I think you guys have done that, which is amazing.
Yeah, and before we switch over to Less and Kosher, I just want to say I'm runtime agnostic. I am runtime non-conform. I don't care if it's 23 minutes. I don't care if, like, we're not there anymore. We can blow up like the time that stories have to be told in with commercial breaks. Like, I've done everything. I've done the hour, I've done the half hour, I've done TikToks, I've done whatever, but like whatever serves the story. And sometimes the longer formats, they put filler to just to fulfill that. But there was I don't think we had filler, and people are binging. What we're discovering before I pass it on is people are actually watching the whole thing. Like I won't sit down and watch a 2-hour film, but I will watch 2 hours worth of something that kind of moves moves along.
Yeah.
Cyrena, did you want anything to say anything before we before we ask the questions?
I just wanted to give last props to Romeo for being the writer, director. Like, people don't know that he wrote the songs as well for this, and he is absolutely amazing and an amazing human to work with as well. I think he's just so talented. I'm so lucky to have worked with him on this show, and like hopefully for the rest of my life. So yes.
You're so lucky. You are the most lucky. Just joking.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm really excited to explore and investigate and talk about your project. I think you can introduce. You're gonna let us see a little bit of a something, a work in progress, and let us peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, so we are in edits right now. Like yesterday, we were with our editor. We're showing a sneak peek of like part of our show. It's unmixed properly. It's uncolored. It's unfinished. Like we're adding some stuff, so it makes both of us excited and a little nervous to share something that's unfinished. So just have that in your heart while you watch it.
I just wanted to give another quick to anyone who doesn't know about our project. It's also has music in it. It's about an electropop singer who's kind of floundering in her career, and she falls into this job as a cantor at a synagogue. To those who don't know, a cantor, I like to describe it as a one-person gospel choir of a synagogue. So they sing all of the prayers, this one person. She's completely ill-equipped, and the clip you're going to see is the first gig she ever does at the synagogue. She doesn't know the song.
And a synagogue is like a church for Jewish people. I don't know who's in the audience. Maybe somebody needs that, just in case.
Yeah.
Hopefully they know what a Jew is.
So she's thrown in. She doesn't know the melody. She's got the lyrics. She's got to figure it out.
Now, the Brachot Rusin.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al harayot v'salanu et harasat v'hitir lanu et hanesot lanu al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin v'kiddushin. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh amo Yisrael hayedei chuppah v'kiddushin baruch atah Adonai
What's the line?
So fun. So fun.
Super fun. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm sure, does Alan Menken get points on the Be My Guest?
It's like the most musical of musical numbers that we have. All the rest are not musical theater at all, but
Is there more dancing incorporated in the show?
that's pretty much it.
I was wondering, I was like, oh
We
my
had
god,
like 1 hour. We rehearsed that in 1 hour, and then we're like, go.
so beautiful. Okay, I guess I'll start the questions off. I just wanted to, you gave some context, but where did it come from is the question. So where, yeah, where did the idea for the musical come from, and why did you choose a musical?
I can start us off. So the very initial germ of an idea came from the fact that After I graduated theater school, I'm a musician and an actor, and the rabbi who did my bat mitzvah reached out to me and basically convinced me to start filling in as a cantor, even though I was very ill-equipped. Like, I don't speak Hebrew. I used to read it when I was 12. I don't read it anymore. I've never read the Torah. I'm not religious. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, but he was like, you're a singer and you can perform well, you can do this. So there were all these ridiculous scenarios I found myself thrust into, and I felt like it would be a good story. And then maybe 4 years ago, I threw up on Facebook, I'm aging myself here, I threw up on Facebook who are the Jewish TV writers in Toronto. And Michael, who I kind of vaguely knew, we didn't know each other that well. We'd met through the industry a bunch of times, wrote back and was like, hey, why are you asking? And we both loved the idea. So we started developing it together about 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, and it went on quite a journey through a lot of things we always knew, because Shane is a really successful musician, and I play music-ish, more like hobby-like. We always knew music wanted to be a part of it, and then we stumbled onto this idea of like rearranging, redoing traditional Jewish songs and prayers, some with like new melodies, some with like weird versions of it, and so that's where all the music stuff came from. So yeah, that sample is a prayer that you would hear at a Jewish wedding done to the tune of Be Our Guest. So they all have sort of like different ways in which we were playing with traditional music and trying to rearrange it.
And I mean, part of the concept too that we wanted to explore is we both come from a Jewish heritage, but we're both pretty cultural Jews as opposed to religious. And we were exploring the idea of how does that fit into modern day life when you're so emotionally connected to this music, emotionally connected to this tradition and this culture, but you don't necessarily connect with the religious part of it. How do you reconcile those things? So that's part of the story, in a very kind of undercurrent way. It's mostly about the characters, but that kind of concept was what started us off.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I guess that leads into my next question is, what did you want to share about your culture, your religion, and what responsibility do you think do you carry with you in this project?
Well, that's okay. So it's interesting. Like, being Jewish is it's a strange identity to have, because it can be ignored at times. Well, it can't be when my name is up on Zoom. Goldlist is really Jewish, but I can walk around a lot of the time and people wouldn't be like, "Oh, look, there's a Jew." There's also times where it's like doesn't necessarily feel integral to my identity sometimes, and then at other times it is the most integral part of my identity. Like, even though I wasn't particularly raised religious, like being Jewish is something deeply important to me. The tradition, the music, the food, the culture. I'm a grandson of Holocaust survivors, so it has a sort of dimension that way. But it's weird being Jewish that you can somewhat step in and step out of it. And so like we were kind of exploring that, like how could this character who doesn't even care about Judaism, she would think, suddenly kind of like feel this resonance with the music and with the tradition, and how it doesn't make sense. I think both of us have a lot of things about the religion that we like kind of do without, but then there's this whole cultural aspect which is like so enticing and obviously so baked into our DNA. So I think it's like there's no resolution there. It's just sort of a weird situation I think a lot of modern secular Jews find themselves in. But I think also like potentially secular, like our makeup artist is a very intensely secular Muslim woman, but whose parents are quite religious, and she was like, I feel this show too, like this idea. And we had worked with someone developing who's a lapsed Catholic, and she sort of felt that thing. She's like, I don't care about Catholicism until like sometimes I do. And I think it's like about that weird phenomenon.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that we always wanted to pay tribute to that haunting heart and soul of the music. We adapted it, we updated it, we made it this electropop kind of thing. But part of it is, in my experience, is that if you asked me to translate it from Hebrew, I couldn't most of the time. And the ones that I do know, the English translation doesn't necessarily mean much to me. It's a lot about God, but the soul and the grief and the love and the joy in the music itself like hits me straight in the heart. And that was a lot of what we were exploring. And then also paying tribute to the fact that like being a Jew isn't just about, even religious ones, reverence. Like the culture is about challenging and questioning and really like holding ourselves up to scrutiny, and we kind of wanted to do that with our characters. Our characters are quite rebellious and challenging, and they're constantly challenging each other and challenging the tradition and challenging the status quo. So in a way, that felt like honoring the tradition by having these intelligent characters who could challenge each other within the story.
How many episodes is it?
7.
How long are they?
They're between 8 and 12 minutes.
8 minutes?
8 to 12 minutes. Yeah, we really they started as 15. And in our development process, we worked with an amazing writer named Kat Sandler as our story editor, which I would highly recommend anyone applying for the development portion. You can either have a mentor on the script side or on the business side. We had one on the script side, and it was like the best decision we made. She was integral. And we re-arced the story multiple times. Kat Sandler. She is fire, yes, in the comments. We re-arced the story multiple times, and it was always constantly about like, how do we tighten it? How do we make every line mean something? How do we make every moment with every character really important and have no extra space? So we've even been cutting some stuff in the editing room, just being like, what's fully integral to our story and our character's arc? How do we make every little moment count? And kind of what we were talking about before is that we still have so much story in 7, 8 to 12 minute episodes. Like there's a full arc and full characters and full development. And you can get that if you do the rewrites and you do the development.
So in the development phase, what was your focus? Did you write the music and write the scripts? Did you have the music pre-made and then you threw old tracks onto it? Like in just for people who are potentially entering development, where did you focus your development on?
Story, story over and over and over again.
And story character
over and over. And we did, and I think the music just was there to serve. We had there's dozens, hundreds of loved Jewish songs and prayers that we could have done. We just picked the ones that fit the right time and place and spot that the cantor would be in. But yeah, we just kept on developing character and story. Like we really went through, and we took our time, which was great. We had a lot of time. We were in no rush. It's another nice thing about not having a network who needs it. You get to do it on your own timeline until you get that funding. So we just spent so much time making sure that we would write it, we would get to the end, and then we would cut back, and we would get to the end, and we would cut back, and then eventually we just got to a place where it made so much sense, and it seemed to fit nicely, and then we knew we were ready.
I mean, I should say we were developing the music because the story required us to use already existing songs. That decision was made based on the requirements of the story. There was a time where we were like, maybe we'll write some of it, but because of the situation our character was in, we decided to just rearrange these songs. And I was lucky because I am a musician and I work in that industry as well. I had a producer that I work with all the time with my band called Ghost Caravan. And during development, we basically developed one song. So we developed the song for the first episode as our proof of concept of like, this is our pitch for what the music will sound like. And we did this electropop version of Avinu Malkeinu, and that was our trailer for the IPF. And we released it right around the high holidays, which it's a song that's sung during the high holidays. So the Jewish community kind of picked it up a bit as like, hey, look at this cool, weird, rebellious version of this super traditional haunting song. But yeah, we were making decisions on the specific sounds of each song based on the episode. So each song sounds a bit different as opposed to it all being one genre. We have like one episode where it's super pop and one episode where it's a bit more classical and another where we've incorporated like ancient instruments like oud and Sephardic. And
we have a Leonard Cohen song also.
We have a Leonard Cohen song as well.
Yeah. It's a show about Canadian Jewish songwriters who fuse what's popular and traditional themes. It's like Leonard Cohen was the greatest at that, so we got a Leonard Cohen song in there as well.
But we always brought it back to story. We never picked a song just because we liked the song. We were like, does this make sense with where the character is at and the situation?
Yeah.
How did you afford a Leonard Cohen song?
I threw myself at the mercy of Sony Music. No, we gave them an impassioned pitch and said, like, we're a small project. We don't have a lot of money, and it's not the master, it's just the publishing rights because we're interpreting ourselves. And
It's just a minute and a half.
we said it was vital to the story, and the story was, important, and they said sure. I mean, we still paid them. We didn't, but not. It wasn't huge. But like, people aren't greedy. Not everyone's greedy. And I guess the other thing, that this is like a good piece of advice. Like, you got to ask. You never know who's going to say.
I mean, one of the
you never know
things
who's going to say yes.
we created this music for Viv specific songs, but then we realized that we also needed a composer. We realized partway through, and the amazing Jewish composer Ari Posner. We were like, he's our ideal. We probably can't afford him, but let's pitch. And we pitched him on it, and he loved it, and he's doing it with us now. So you never know. Someone might turn you down, and that's fine. But like, just have the guts to go and ask, because a lot of people are working in this industry, working with networks, working on things they're not necessarily passionate about. And sometimes they're willing and craving just to make something artistic with you if they like the idea.
So, really quick question. How much in the development did you think of who the audience was for your project?
We definitely did. One of the benefits was we were in a way writing for ourselves. Like, we wrote it specifically for Jews of our generation, Jews and musicians of our generation who share our experience. We're like, let's just pitch it straight to the 20, 30 something Jews in Toronto. And then, so it became super, super, super specific. And then the interesting thing that happened when we released our trailer was that we had all these other people reach out to us and say that they were really excited about it and resonated with them because they had a similar experience, as Michael mentioned before, with like within their culture of feeling that push-pull within their own culture, their own religion. And I think if you make something really specific, other people from other backgrounds will relate to it as well. But we basically went our audience and our brain was like ourselves and our friends and our community.
Yeah, honestly, it's pretty niche and pretty weird. And like, I think, once we knew we were going to make a show about a electro pop cantor, we're just like, listen, this isn't going to be like instantly the most popular thing in the entire world. So let's not worry about it and just make what we love and what speaks to us and resonates, and either it will or it won't resonate with other people. And there's definitely there's definitely a handful of Jews our age in like New York, LA, Chicago, Montreal, and Toronto that are gonna, I think, really get it, and the other people will see. So who knows?
I think the other thing that made me really want to tell this story too is as a Jew, like a lot of the Jewish stories I've been asked to tell or I see are a lot about trauma, like the trauma of being Jewish, which is a very important story to tell. And there is trauma in the story as well, but it's about a lot more than that. It's really about the experience and the musicality and the dream and the characters, and less so. It's not a Holocaust story, and we never wanted to tell a Holocaust story because we wanted to talk about our experience and our lives in this kind of fantastical way.
Yeah, it's not the like the Jews you see when everyone like historic Jews, like museum Jews. It's like real live actual Judaism, how it's lived by modern Jews who are like, what the fuck are we doing with this thing?
That's so important.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask Shaina, just so you can speak on your experience as the co-writer, creator, co-executive producer, and star of this show. I wanted to know how you navigated that, if it made things more difficult or easier. I just wanted you to speak on that a little bit.
I mean, it's definitely a lot of hats to wear, I'll tell you that. And like, if I didn't love this concept and love working with Michael as an amazing co-creator and the rest of our team, it would have been hell. But instead, it's been like the most fulfilling experience. And a really interesting thing happened because we spent like a year and a half developing it and writing it and exploring these characters. I remember there was a moment like 3 days before we shot where I suddenly had this realization that I was in every single scene and I needed to really memorize all my lines. But it was probably the least actor prep I've ever had to do because all of that actor prep was already done. we'd explored every moment from a creator point of view, that I knew the thought process behind every line. I knew, and I was still open to playing and changing, but there wasn't that any of those nerves around, do I get this scene? Like I understood the characters so deeply, and I understood the music so deeply because I've been part of creating it, that it felt like it already lived in me, which was a really cool experience I'd never had before, because I've never written for myself. So it was a lot of hats, but ironically, being on set as an actor was probably the easiest part of it for me. I was like, I know this, I know the character, let's go. And part of that, I will say, a lot of that was thanks to Michael and the rest of our team, who took me off producing emails like 3 days before we started. So it was crazy. I was involved in all the producing and all the organizing, and then right before it's like I went into a vacuum, and they kind of protected me so that I could do my job. And then we wrapped, and then I went back on those emails. But I think it is important, if you're doing all those jobs, to create some kind of separation between, protect yourself in some way as the artist, so that you can feel safe to be vulnerable in that situation, and you're not worrying about the fact that like the craft truck isn't here yet. You know, someone else can worry about that. You can worry about that 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were just pinged in the chat. So thank you, and also thank you on behalf of Team Topline, because it's the first time that we've spoken about this project outside of just us talking to ourselves, and we're happy to have shared the floor with Less Than Kosher team. A lot of similarities for sure. So now we are going to introduce Mark Shepland, who's gonna do a Q&A from the people in the audience of internet.
Thanks, Romeo, and thank you to the Canadian Academy of Cinema and Television for having this panel during Members Lounge Week. Thank you to all of the panelists. I know how busy your schedules are. In creating, developing, show running other shows, it's super valuable to hear firsthand experience from shows that we obviously love at the IPF. We are one of the funders of each of the shows, and we run a development packaging program. Thanks, guys. And we're so stoked about your shows. We're so excited when we read the creative. And obviously, for me, the most rewarding part of the job is seeing them come to fruition. So it was excellent to see a clip from Less Than Kosher for the first time today. And Topline, I watched half the season the other night, and it is absolutely fantastic. It's such a sincere, honest, moving show with incredible music. One song in particular that has been stuck in my head since I watched. So thank you for all of your work creating it. Thank you to Katie Elder for helping to program the session. One last shout out. Thank you to The Communist Daughter. And for the record, The Communist Daughter is another short form series that won Best Supporting Performance in a Web Program or Series the other night at the CSAs. And for the record, received 8 nominations. Both you can stream on CBC Gem. Okay, so with that out of the way.
You can also, I'm the like fake voice in Communist Daughter. My best friend produced it. And the like musical theater voice that comes out of one of the characters' mouths, that's me. Small world.
Very cool. I don't think I knew that. That's awesome. Yeah, a couple of reactions to the trailers. Unfortunately, we can't see all of the reactions, but a lot of people were laughing during the Less Than Kosher show, and somebody wrote that they've added it to their must-watch list for Topline to see after seeing the trailer. So that's awesome to see. Okay, to the questions from the audience. This is an interesting one, and it's a question that I think is totally fair and maybe not talked about enough, and we don't hear it as a funder maybe enough. But Michael, I'll start with you, and then I'll pass it over to Romeo. How do you stay financially afloat? How do you keep making money while developing a project? Outside of maybe a producer's fee during the development process, but how do you stay financially afloat outside of it?
Well, there's not tons and tons of money in this. So I will say that sometimes, especially with your first project, there can be this idea that's like, well, I just won't pay myself and I can put more money on screen and I can give more money to other people, which is really noble. And I certainly did that. But the truth is, like, your talent and time is worth it. So people should pay themselves and avoid the temptation to be like, I just won't take any money. Other than that, try to get a part-time job with flexible hours. I work for a marketing firm part-time, so that's really very useful, and I do it from home, so I'm able to flip it around. But Boy, that's not a good question. I mean, it's not an easy question anyway. Romeo, how do you make money?
I always had a job. Straight up, I had a 9 to 5. I was working as senior producer at CBC Arts. I had a job before at Bell, and I spent all my vacations and evenings writing and shooting shit. And it's only like in the last 2 years after being in this industry for a long time that I quit having a day job, and I'm just getting paid writing, directing. But like the thing is, it's like working off of these budgets is not a living. Like you're gonna get a little bit of money. You're gonna, like I wore all the hats, and it's still not enough to live off of for a very long time. So I always had a job. Period. Like like whether it's or freelance. Like yeah, I've always had a job. It's only in the last couple of years that I took the jump.
Marry someone rich. Maybe that's, marry wealth. That's a great method.
Great one for the artist right there.
Okay, thanks guys for being honest on that question. Okay, another question from Aisha. Any tips on applying for development funding? What criteria should you absolutely have in place before applying? I'll say from the IPF, we do prioritize creative first. It's the first thing we look at when we're reviewing the projects. And second to that, it's the team and then the mentor on the team. But we do look at creative first. And as an FYI to everybody watching, you have to apply with only a 3-page creative document. You also have a 1-page vision document to sell a little bit more of the passion of the series and the more personal elements for creating it. But when you applied in 2020 and 2021, what were the elements that you guys spent so much time on before applying? Romeo, let's start with you.
Half of me, like the creative just has to be good. Like, coming from a racialized community, it's easy for us to sit back and go, well, we need to see more BIPOC represented. We need to see this more represented. And sometimes creative will suffer if you think anyone's going to give you any money because you're coming from a underrepresented community, or you're coming from a point of view that hasn't been expressed. If you can fold that unexpressed point of view and underserved community, and if you could fold that into really cool creative, and if you could fold that into really compelling characters who are going through an interesting journey, perhaps in one of these kind of like marginalized communities, that just makes for good story. So if you have like a cultural activism or a cultural burden because I've been doing this Filipino shit for a long time. And so sometimes it works because there's no other Filipino doing it. And sometimes it doesn't because then the creative suffers. But the thing is, it is the lens, as Michael was talking about. Like, we can't escape being a Jewish person, or we can't escape being a Filipino person. But that's kind of like that's the special sauce, if you can authentically express your culture through story, then I think it just adds to your application. But the creative has to be. The creative has to pop off the screen. I think the creative has to come from an authentic place. I think with Topline, like I felt really confident about it because I'm like, A, I haven't seen this story. B, I haven't seen this treatment. And C, I haven't seen a Filipina protagonist treated in this way. So I felt really confident about the creative, even though all of my Filipino, my mission to take over with the Filipino flavor was all folded into the application.
Yeah. I would say too, Michael, before we even applied for development, Michael and I had been passing ideas back and forth and for maybe a year at least. And so even though that first one is like a page or a page and a half, I think it can be really misleading to be like, oh, it's only a page. It just means that you need your ideas really succinct and consolidated. And sometimes a page takes more work than like 10, because you need to take the ideas of 10 pages and explain it. If you can explain it to an 8-year-old, then you've really got an idea. So we had hours of thought and hours of of discussion and changes and creation behind those 1 or 2 pages when we first applied. And then we didn't stop there. We weren't like, sweet, we got the money, we got the best idea, you know. Then we brought on someone like Kat Sandler, and then through that whole summer when we were developing, we were talking like all the time. And I mean that, all the time. We were meeting with Kat, we were discussing story, we were developing and always trying to make it better, always trying to distill it and deepen what we were talking about. So I think my biggest piece of advice, and I feel like it's grade 7 teacher, but like, don't leave it to the week before, don't leave it to the night before. You might be able to pull it off, but I know after that experience of handing in that grant, I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. I feel so good about this grant because we've spent so much time thinking about it.
Yeah, you want to chase the idea down fully. Just want to fully chase it down and see where it's going to lead you.
That's awesome. That's super great insight. One more question related to applying for our fund, and then I'll end on some music-related questions because that's a common theme between the two shows. Another element of applying for us is having either a story editor or development executive. Shaina, you mentioned having Kat Sandler on board. Romeo, you had a number of story editors. You also worked with Shaftesbury on the show. I'd just like to know, this is the #1 question we get from new and emerging creators. How did you leverage, how did you reach out, how did you make those connections to find people that are not only strong in experience, but relevant to your show? And Cyrena, for you, I'll start the question off with you, is acting for the first time on screen. And I know you talked a little bit about feeling very comfortable on set and comfortable in the character. And I maybe don't want to label Romeo as a mentor for you, but what was it like working with him and having that experience on the show? And then I'll pass it to Romeo to kind of talk about how he leveraged story editors and development executives for him, and then over to the Less Than Kosher team.
You can absolutely call Romeo a mentor if he would so gladly take that title, because I've learned so much from him. I feel like under his like wing has just been like really helped me out. He is such a wonderful collaborator. So he's so open-minded, and I've like my directors in like music theater, it's just like staple. There's like one way to do things sometimes, and like acting teachers, they want one specific thing from you, and like he really just let us play and have like different understandings of like the scene as long as we carry the story. And like he just let us like be as free as possible, and it was so encouraging the entire time working for him, and I was not scared or intimidated about being beside him. So yeah, as a first comer on set, like I was very lucky to just have him on set. So yeah.
For me with story editors, we had a 5-day writers room. I brought in a writers room. I wanted to make sure that because it was in the music industry, we had a consultant who like wrote songs for Bieber and BTS and like big K-pop stars. So we had a consultant to make sure it was legit in this world. And it was 3 female writers. I wanted to make sure, even though the story is very, very, very personal to me, because ultimately, while it takes place in the music industry, it's about a family grieving the loss of their mother. So all of those things I can relate to, but we had 2 female protagonists. So the room was 3 other female writers, 2 being Filipina, 1 having her first, and 2 actually having written their first scripts. And then 1 who's like a more senior writer, Lauren Gosnell. And so I just want to make sure that because it's so auteur driven, I really want to make sure there were voices inside the room that were strong, that had the female perspective, and that were contrary to my own kind of tastes and my own instincts, just to make sure that because it's auteur, that it wasn't just a singular voice and that there were multiple voices in the room being represented. And then I approached Shaftesbury. I'm like, my producer, David Langell, I did a web series, IPF season 1 called Prison Dancer. that was like 10 years ago, and he worked on that, and we were looking for an opportunity to work together again. And I kind of want to work with a bigger production company and not build a company to make a web series and deal with all of that kind of like admin. Anyways, yes, I'm done.
I think for us with Kat Sandler, I mean, I already knew her. I was lucky to already know Kat Sandler from the theater community. I've done a lot of work in theater, and so has she. Not that we were exceptionally close, but we did know and respect each other. So I just kind of threw it out there. And she was super busy herself because she's fantastically talented and successful, but she liked the concept, so she made the time. So it's kind of what we were talking about with the composer too, where for various roles in this, we felt like it was a bit of a shot in the dark asking people, but then because they felt like the creative was strong and they met with us and they liked us, they jumped on, including like some actors doing workshops with us that we didn't expect necessarily to say yes, and they did. And you kind of just have to have the guts to ask, and then go back to the drawing board if they're not available, you know?
Yeah, and I would say just make sure you ask the people, like if you're doing something that's personal and authentic that reflects it, then find the people that you think will like that.
Yeah, totally.
Right? If you're writing something that's about blank type of person who does blank type of thing, find the person who's worked on a project like that or has that life experience. Be like, hey, you did this, we're doing this, you got to do this because it's for you. And that person will probably be delighted.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that insight. We are wrapping up. Maybe if we can take a couple words and say what you want to see more in music focused series in the future in a couple words. Cyrena, maybe Cyrena, we can start with you, and then we'll pass it to wrap up.
With music?
Yeah, if seeing music focused series in the future, what are a couple words of what you would want to see represented?
Go to Romeo first. Sorry, I'm like.
I just want more diversity. I feel like I love the idea of electropop, traditional Jewish music. I love, I love fusion stuff. I just, you know what I mean? Like, just because we're working in musicals, I just don't think it needs to sound just like a musical anymore. I think we're a little bit post-musical, post-Lin-Manuel, post-Weber. So I just think there's a lot more room for new styles and more kind of auteur type of sounds.
Thanks. And Shaina, anything else to add?
I totally agree. Genre musicals, any genre can be a musical, and make sure it has authenticity and heart. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. Michael?
I just agree. Those are great answers.
I would say the same thing as Romeo, just the diversity and having stories that we were talking about before that aren't that are about culture and not trauma bound. Just to have experiences and realize that they're not people that just have to be associated with all the bad things that occur to them. Just people that live and have a specific culture and background. So diversity.
We need some joy after the past couple of years. Music can give that.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you so much again for your time and participating in this event. I'm going to head back over to Nancy to wrap us up. And a final reminder that you can check out Topline now on CBC Gem, and Less and Kosher look for updates soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. What a treat. My ukulele just fell over. That's got to be a sign. Thank you again to Cyrena, Michael, Romeo, Shaina, and Mark for today's conversation. And another thank you to our partners at the Independent Production Fund for presenting this session.